Here at the Katie Phang News Channel, you guys know me. What am I always saying? I mean, other than be mad, be outraged, demand accountability, I am telling you to run for office. I am telling you to look for your local and state races. And I feel like you should be running because I believe in you. And I also believe that politics is local for so many of us, and democracy in real time and in practice and in our daily lives is what's happening in our own backyards. And so to be able to control that, or to be able to have a say in it, to have a seat at the table, you need to run for office. And when I meet officials that are mayors or governors or secretaries of state or people that are just doing the right thing and putting in the hard work to improve their own backyards, I want to bring them to you. I want to bring their stories to you because I want you to hear about what they're doing. I want you to be inspired like I am. And I want you to think about the fact that these ideas, you can extrapolate them to anywhere in the United States. And you can also extrapolate them on a federal or national level. I'm hoping that they take this one-on-one daily citizen contact, constituent contact energy to DC, because that's lost now in DC. I feel like there is this kind of sense of privilege from some people that are our electeds in DC about the jobs that we elected them to go and do. Those are not their seats. They are our seats. We just happen to have them go and be our representatives in Washington. So getting back to why I'm introducing you, and maybe you don't know who he is, and maybe you do, but he's spectacular. He's the current mayor of Cincinnati. His name is Aftab Pureval. It is an interesting name, and we're going to get into it in the interview now. But he's the current mayor of Cincinnati. He's running for re-election. Did you know Vice President J.D. Vance, his half-brother, is one of his opponents? So you know that MAGA's watching this race really carefully. But without further ado, here's my time spent with Cincinnati Mayor Aftab Pureval. And joining me now at the Katie Phang News Channel, it is a privilege and an honor to be able to spend time with Mayor Aftab Pureval, who is the mayor of Cincinnati. As most of you know, I am an incredibly proud Korean American, child of immigrants, first generation. I've had the pleasure of actually spending time with the mayor on a previous occasion for a panel. And just knowing that you're the first Asian American Cincinnati mayor brings me such pride. I know it's an important part of who you are, but more critically, you are somebody who cares about Cincinnati. You're currently in a re-election campaign. Mayor, talk about kind of how things are going with the campaign, and what are kind of like the biggest issues that are percolating to the top right now when you're speaking to your constituents about this race?
Well, first of all, Katie, thanks so much for having me on, and thank you so much for your voice at the national level. Obviously, your wealth of experience as a subject matter expert, but also just the fact that you're such a proud Asian professional, proud Korean American, lifting up the important issues of the day around the world and the country, but also lifting up Asian issues and perspectives. And that's where I'd really like to start. I'm proud of the fact that I'm the first Asian American mayor in Cincinnati's history. Really proud of my other brothers and sisters in this role across the country, whether it's Mayor Harrell in Seattle or Mayor Wu in Boston. You know, unfortunately, there's not many of us Asian American mayors of major American cities, but that's changing. And that's been changing recently because of not just my race, but also because of Mayor Wu and Mayor Harrell, Mayor Gloria in San Diego, another Mayor Wu in Wichita, Kansas, Mayor Nuremberg, who just left San Antonio, and now Gina Ortiz-Jones, one Asian mayor for another in San Antonio. And so I'm really proud to be part of this class of Asian mayors who are really groundbreaking across the country. And the campaign to hold this seat and to continue that work is going really, really well. We've really hit the ground running all year, doing a lot of work in our communities, showing up, going to where the voters are, hearing them about their issues, about their hopes. And, you know, to answer your question directly, Katie, the top issues in Cincinnati and probably in every major city in the country have been the same. Number one is always public safety. Public safety for any mayor, for any local government is always going to be the first, second, and third priority. And that's true for Cincinnati, not just in our rhetoric, but also in how we spend our dollars. I'm proud of the fact that this council and I have invested a huge, historic amount of dollars into public safety by increasing our recruit classes so that we have more visibility and more men and women in uniform, providing the safety that too many of us take for granted. It's such a hard job, and we've made it clear that we have their backs from the very beginning. The second one is really a larger bucket of affordability. And at the top of that bucket is housing. Housing affordability continues to be a challenge for Cincinnati. It's our goal, the work we've done for the last 4 years that we need to continue, is to make sure that no matter where you live in Cincinnati, any one of our 52 neighborhoods, that you have access to good quality housing. And we're really proud of the fact that in our 4 years, we have tripled the amount of affordable housing units that we've built compared to the previous administration. More work to do on both of those issues, but that's what we're laser focused on.
Well, I think that's the perfect segue, because there is a program that you initiated with the council called the Connected Communities Program. And I really wanted to talk about that because, to your point, there can be an extrapolation from Cincinnati, its successes, and the work that still needs to be done to any other major metropolitan city across our United States. But I really loved reading up about this Connected Communities Program, which is something that is kind of a crown jewel, right, for you in your tenure as mayor. The goal has been affordable housing, to what you just spoke about affordability. It targets public transportation lines, neighborhood business districts to increase and to support sustainable growth. Why is that so important now, Mayor, especially in light of what I own and I call the big bullshit bill that Donald Trump and the Republicans in DC sought fit to impose across our United States?
Well, let's be clear. Nothing the Trump administration has done has helped housing production at any level, whether it's affordable or market rate. The tariff confusion, putting tariffs on the component parts of housing like gypsum and timber and steel and aluminum, has just made construction costs of housing even more expensive, and they were already expensive. The uncertainty in the global and national economy, keeping interest rates high, those macroeconomic factors make it really hard for cities to get anything out of the ground. But despite that challenging landscape, we have done extraordinary work on housing production. You're specifically talking about zoning. Connected Communities was our effort to really update our antiquated zoning code, which was really putting an artificial cap on how much housing we could build. Just to back up a little bit, Cincinnati is going through a really, really positive economic time with a lot of momentum. And in fact, our population is growing. It's growing for the first time in a long time. You would expect in that 10-year period where more people are living here that our housing stock would grow congruent. Unfortunately, it's the worst case scenario. Because we're such an old city, we've lost housing stock in that 10-year period. So more people are living here and there are fewer places for them to live. So of course, rents, mortgages, property taxes are going through the roof. In fact, Redfin just published a study showing Cincinnati, not New York, not Miami, not Seattle, but Cincinnati is the number one city in the country for percentage of rent increases. We have to fix that. And in order to fix that, of course, we need money and subsidies to provide the gap financing to make these housing deals pencil, and so we can move forward to construction. But even if you put all the dollars together, if it is literally illegal to build housing in my community because of old zoning laws, then nothing's going to happen. So we did the very hard work. Katie, I'm sure the national and statewide electeds have their own challenging issues. Zoning is the third rail of local politics, because when you touch zoning, you're really getting to the heart of look and feel of a neighborhood, the history of a neighborhood. And residents want a lot of control over that and are very concerned about change. But we did the hard work, 2 years of community engagement, educating people about the importance of zoning, what a setback is, right? What density and height restrictions are, what parking minimums are. And we said, look, we can no longer be working off of a zoning code that was created in the 1970s, in part to prevent people from leaving the city by creating suburban areas within a dense metropolitan area. And so we've got to change our zoning. And so instead of doing, one kind of blanket citywide approach, we said we really want people living and working in our downtown, along our transit lines, and in our neighborhood business districts. For those of you unfamiliar, Cincinnati is a city of 52 neighborhoods, and almost all of those neighborhoods have their own downtown or neighborhood business district. So what we did was we loosened density restrictions. We loosened height restrictions. We loosened parking minimum requirements. We basically deregulated a very kind of free market conservative perspective, taking down a lot of this red tape, bureaucratic red tape, to make it easier to build housing. It's hard work. It's very challenging from a local perspective, but I'm proud of the fact that we're the first city in the state to do that, and Columbus and Cleveland have now followed suit.
So, a lot of people may not know this about you, but there definitely have been eyes on you, especially for bigger national roles. But I really like the idea because for my viewers and my followers, Mayor, I spend a lot of time talking about the importance of reinvesting within your own backyards. Meaning, I tell people, of course, we should be focused on 2026 and 2028. Of course, those are important. But the state, local, and municipal races are very important as well. Not only have we seen talent from that level elevate to federal. But now we're actually seeing a return of people that have served in Congress or our United States Senate coming back to serve in roles on the state and local level. And you first ran to be the clerk of courts in Hamilton County and won as the youngest. I believe you were the youngest clerk of courts in Hamilton County, but you were definitely the first Democrat in 100 years. And before I get into the kind of next part of that journey for you, I loved that. One, you ran when you were young. And you still are young, by the way. But two, I'll give you credit for that. But two, you ran and you were the first Democrat in 100 years. And the reason why I want to talk about this with my viewers as well with you is I am a very bright blue dot in a very, I don't care what anybody says, red state of Florida right now. I have Ron DeSantis and others. And you weren't dissuaded by this idea of being the first Democrat in 100 years to hold this role. And I feel also like roles like clerk of courts, roles like secretary of state, roles like councilmen and women, these are becoming incredibly important and sometimes even more important than perhaps who your United States Senator is from your state, because you are the person who's literally the neighbor. You're the person who you can walk in and speak to about the issues that are the most compelling and most important to you on a day-by-day basis.
That's right. Brian Stevenson, an incredible civil rights attorney, really a leading light in the country on race relations and justice, calls it getting proximate. There's a lot of well-meaning progressives in our country who say they care about racial equity, they care about racial justice, they care about the wealth inequities in our community, and yet they're never around those communities. What I love about local politics, whether it's clerk of courts or mayor, is that you're in those communities. That they are your neighbors, they are your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. It's hard for me to go grocery shopping because everybody wants to talk to me about the pothole outside their home or what
Exactly.
they have. But it's also really empowering and fulfilling to be able to actually fix their issues, to be able to have the tools and the support to make their lives better. You're so close, you're so tangible to that leadership. And more to the point, Katie, I mentioned earlier, but there's just a lot of unrest. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear based on the Trump administration's decisions, both in communities of color and vulnerable communities, but just a lot of fear based on the world economy. And there's never been a more important time for local leaders to be good at their job, because it's our job to protect them. It's our job to hear them out and calm them down and have a plan. That's what I love about my job as mayor, because it's a real job, right? If I don't have the water coming out of the faucet that's clean and accessible, if the trash isn't being picked up, if we don't get gun violence out of control, people don't expect me to hold a meeting or give a speech. They want me to fix it. They expect local leaders to fix it. And to your viewers, if you are one of those people with anxiety, if you are afraid, there's an extraordinary opportunity in this election in 25, even before 26. Obviously, people are always focused on the state and federal elections, but so many cities and school boards and townships are going to the ballot this year. And if you're frustrated with the state of not just the nation, but your community, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to speak up for the voiceless. This is your opportunity to speak up for communities who feel like they have been targeted. And that's what I find so inspiring about my work is not just what impact we can have on Cincinnati, but hopefully what we can inspire in other communities working together.
I want to stay on this vein a little bit here, Mayor, because in 2017, there was a resolution or a declaration that Cincinnati is a sanctuary city.
Mhm.
And sometimes I don't use that phrase because legally there is no definition of a sanctuary city. There
Right.
is no legal, and you know, you're a lawyer too. For those of you that are tuning in, Mayor Pureval is a lawyer as well. So you and I both know there's no legal definition of a sanctuary city. It's more of a moniker or a name that is used to describe a place, ironically though, that follows the law, right?
Yeah,
It's a
that's right.
city that says, or a jurisdiction that says federal immigration laws are federal immigration laws and the feds handle the immigration side. I have state and local laws that I have to adhere to, and usually never the twain shall meet, and if they do, then there's some deference that due to the feds, right? But generally speaking though, sanctuary cities is just a moniker that's used to describe an area that frankly just abides by the laws. How are you navigating that right now? Because Cincinnati is just such a beautifully diverse city. You and I are sitting here talking. You have your incredibly diverse ethnic background, but your city is so diverse. And I know it can't be easy. I see what Mayor Wu's going through in Boston. I mean, there is a lot that is going on when it comes to this administration, especially when it comes to the incredibly draconian immigration enforcement policies that we're seeing that is coming out of this administration.
Yeah, it's a scary time. I'll just start with that. I meet with vulnerable communities throughout my community, throughout the city, who don't know if there's going to be a masked federal officer knocking down on their door and taking their children, or if they're going to show up at the schools or the courthouse, traditionally very safe places. And that's really the intent for Cincinnati, to say, look, we're going to follow federal law, but we are welcoming to immigrant populations and vulnerable populations. And it's not just the right thing to do. It's critically important for our economic strength and vibrancy. We are home to the largest consumer products company in the world, Procter and Gamble, the largest grocer in the country, Kroger, one of the most important aeronautical companies, GE Aerospace, and we have the #1 children's hospital in the country. We are in a fight for talent. We've seen that our population has grown, and a big part of that is immigration, people choosing to come to Cincinnati from around the world because of our cultural assets, but because of the jobs and the incredible Fortune 500s that are headquartered here. You know, and a lot of this conversation gets lost in public safety. Let me start with this. I don't care what your immigration status is. If you commit a violent crime in Cincinnati, we're going to come after you and we're going to put you in jail. But we also have to be very, very aware that cruelty can't be the point, that intimidating and scaring people to go deeper underground has significant public policy consequences. Our truancy rates for Cincinnati public schools, you know, obviously it's summer now, but before summer started was really going through the roof. And what's more devastating is this is the same generation of students who are sheltering in place and away from their schools during the pandemic. The other challenge that we have is oftentimes victims of violent crime are themselves part of these immigrant or undocumented populations. And so we're allowing violent crime to fester and be pervasive because they no longer feel comfortable coming to the Cincinnati Police Department to make a claim or be a witness or, you know, follow through on a prosecution. So there are real consequences to this. But the fundamental point, Katie, is that we are a local municipality. There is, as federal law is written, there is no responsibility or role for local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law. And we've made that very clear. We will follow the law. But as many people know, we're dealing with some challenging public safety issues right now in Cincinnati, and we need all of the police visibility that we can get, particularly in our urban core. And I want them focused on violent crime and gun violence, which is the real issue of Cincinnati, and not, you know, some political posturing taking away that valuable time from the issues that will actually keep us safe.
Or taking resources from Cincinnati and going to a Home Depot parking lot and
Right.
rounding up people because they're looking for jobs and they may not be citizens of the United States, right? I mean, it's just such a disproportionate imposition upon your own limited resources to begin with than to ask for this to happen, right? I mean,
But we
that's the big challenge for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But on that resources front, we do have a role in supporting organizations who support these vulnerable communities. And so this last budget, we increased our dollars to the Immigration Refugee Law Center because we know that they have bandwidth issues given all of the uncertainty and fear amongst their client population. We increased resources to Santa Maria. We increased resources to the Hispanic Chamber. We increased resources to Catholic Charities, which is our main immigrant relocation services that works with the State Department. So we're doing what we can from a local level, but more cynical than, or equally as cynical as, masked ICE agents spreading terror in vulnerable communities is the funding cuts that the Trump administration has levied, and the thousands of jobs that have been lost in Cincinnati due to cuts to the VA or the IRS or NIOSH or EPA. And so the city is trying to do everything we can to soften that blow. But of course, our budget is nowhere near the budget of the federal government.
So I promised I was going to get back to your trajectory. And the
Sure.
reason why I'm going to bring this up is it really resonated with something that I had a conversation with Stacey Abrams recently, and I wanted to kind of share this and weave it in with our conversation. So you ran for Congress and you didn't win.
Mhm.
And then you ran for the clerk of courts. You were reelected, right? And then you ran for mayor and you won. And,
I ran 5 times in 4 years or something like that. It was terrible. It was a
Well,
lot.
well, listen, I'm going to say that you're a good overachieving, type A Asian. I'm going to say that's what
Yeah.
you are. So, but here's the thing, though. What I appreciated from Stacey was this, because I asked her this. I was in conversation with her on her book tour, and I was like, talk about what it's like to run and lose, because that is something I think that stops people, right, from running. I think a lot of people think about the commitment of the time and the money, et cetera, but then they also think about the fear of, like I said, you run for an office that's never had a Democrat in 100 years, and boom, you end up doing it. Stacey said she didn't look at it like she ran and she lost, right? She looked at it as she added a chapter to a book, and it was a new chapter, and it was a new way of looking at it. So I want to ask you, do you share that same sentiment, Mayor, which is you ran for office, but it didn't deter you from continuing to run again? Because I'm a true believer in this idea that we have to make this investment. Like we cannot look around us and feel like somebody else is going to step up and do it. Like we have to kind of find the ability and the will within ourselves to say, okay, I get knocked down, I get back up. Okay, it looks like it's going to be daunting, but I can still get through it.
Yeah, I find Stacey Abrams really inspiring, and there's little surprise that she's far more mature in reflecting back on a loss. I will say that it was terrible. I mean, it's so hard. In 2018, I was recruited to run for this congressional race. Had no plans to do it. Keep in mind, I just entered politics for the first time in 2016 for a pretty sleepy county race. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that I was the first Democrat in 100 years to win it. But running for clerk of courts, which no one has ever heard of, to Congress in a red to blue seat, highly prioritized by both parties, was an awakening. It was really trial by fire. It was a crucible of experience, and losing was personally very challenging because
Sure.
politics is all about empathy. When you're talking to voters, whether in person or on your program, voters either believe that you understand their issues, that you are authentic, and that most importantly you're going to fight like hell for them, or they don't. It's a very personal endeavor. And so when you lose, it's hard not to take that personally, like you have failed to live up to the voters' expectation. And can't blame the voters. It's your fault you didn't win, right? It's your fault this policy or legislation didn't pass. And so, maybe a chapter in a book is a healthier way of looking at it. But what I looked at it was was falling short, and not fighting the urge to blame other people, and rather just take a dispassionate look at why I lost, what I could do better, what I could try to employ in the future. And not running for office never really kind of entered my mind because I was running for Congress as clerk of court. So I still, even in the campaign, was doing that job, and even after the campaign, after we lost, I was doing that job. And what draws me to politics isn't about running and winning. What draws me to politics is the work. I mean, that's why I was clerk of courts in the first place, because given my background as a federal litigator, a federal prosecutor, and then in-house counsel at Procter & Gamble, I saw the real problems of the just the administration of justice in our justice system. We focus so much on criminal justice reform, rightly so, but so many people in our community are getting their wages garnished, or they're facing an eviction because they get a scary letter in the mail and they have no idea how to handle it. And the clerk's office is the main interface between the public and the courthouse. And so I was really passionate about that and remained passionate about it after we lost. And I have no regrets about 18. I'm proud of the fact that I'm part of the generation that stepped into the arena and fought back against what I viewed as a racist and xenophobic administration. And that's what I'm continuing to do as mayor, trying to be that light for our local communities who are scared, particularly in this challenging time.
And that is the perfect segue to yet another question as we wrap up our conversation here. I'm going to read your entire name because I love this part. Aftab Karma Singh Pureval. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. I'm like
Aftab is sunshine in Persian.
Yep.
Karma is Tibetan.
Mm-hmm.
Singh is Punjabi. And Pureval is courtesy of your father, who's Indian, right?
That's right. Yep. That's
your
right.
Your father's from India and your mom is a refugee from Tibet. And what I loved about your family history is your maternal grandfather was a freedom fighter in Tibet. Yep. But your mom fled communism. And when I read about these things, Aftab, what I really love is this. These are the types of conversations we have to have right now. And it makes me kind of emotional when I talk about this, because there is this wholesale campaign of destruction of the beauty of the fabric of what our country is, the attempt to whitewash history and the attempt to eliminate the diverse voices, these lived experiences that you bring as the mayor based upon how you were raised and the stories you were told and the cultural history you bring to the table. It has such value. And so when you look back and you look at your maternal grandfather and what he went through as a freedom fighter, and you just said right now how you want to combat xenophobia and racism, and you want to be a light for people, how important is it to make people know that their lived experiences, especially coming from a diverse background, not only makes Cincinnati spectacular, but also can be extrapolated to any place in our United States. And that experience can just make it so much more of a more fulsome and just kind of healthier experience, because I'm raising a 10-year-old daughter and I want her to know that this world is not just what Donald Trump and the Republicans want it to be, right? And so when I tell her, I have conversations with people like you, and I tell her about your background, for her too, she also learns that Tibet is not what she has the traditional ideas of what Tibet is too. I mean, it's just a lot. And so I just wanted to ask you about that.
Thank you. It's a really important question, and thanks so much for bringing up my family background, because I am very proud of my grandparents. My maternal grandmother was a community leader, a Tibetan Buddhist kind of religious and cultural leader in the community, in the refugee community that she was in as an adult. My paternal grandparents, very proud of as well. My Dadaji was a brigadier in the Indian military. And so there's this, even though I didn't have a very deep relationship with them because I grew up on the other side of the world, I often reflect on the fact that I didn't know them very well, but they were both committed to public service in their own way. And that's true for me, which is inspiring, that there's this almost cosmic connection between the work that I do now and the work that they did on the other side of the world several, 2 generations ago. But I'm proud of my grandparents, but what I'm really proud of is my parents. They met in India in 1980. My mom, grew up in a refugee camp in southern India called Bailakupe, and they got married and they immigrated of all places to Beaver Creek, Ohio. And I came along a couple years later. As you mentioned, I'm half Tibetan, half Indian. I'm 6'3", but I'm all Ohio baby, born and raised in
round on the end and high in the middle.
Ohio State. And when I reflect back on my parents' story, being that young, not knowing anyone in this country, not having very much money, but betting on themselves and betting on the American dream. My parents fell in love with America before they even understood what America was, before they themselves were citizens. And every day that I'm mayor, is just a dividend for that investment and that risk, showing them that it was the right decision. In one generation, my family went from being refugees to now the mayor of a major American city. And Katie, that story only happens right here in this country. And it's on me, it's on you, it's on everyone watching who cares to make sure that that is true for the next generation, that I feel an incredible responsibility. Cincinnati is only 3% Asian, and yet I'm its first Asian mayor. And I feel a huge responsibility to represent my Tibetan, Indian, and Asian communities exceptionally well, because I'm proud to be the first, but it's also my responsibility to make sure I'm not the last. And I feel a responsibility not just to perform for my constituents, which of course is number one, but also to perform in a way that makes it easier, that paves a path here in Cincinnati and in other communities for Asians to excel and to dream of these leadership positions.
Well, Mayor Aftab Pureval from Cincinnati, how can people support you if they are interested in supporting you?
Yeah, so we're in re-election mode right now. The election is this November. So we're in the sprint to the finish, frankly. So you can go to mayoraftab.com to sign up to volunteer, to learn more about me, or to contribute to our re-election campaign. Katie, thanks so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it.
As I stated at the beginning, it is an honor and a privilege to spend time with you, and I am looking forward to seeing what's next, your next conquering thing that you're going to be doing. But in the meantime, we'll be looking at you to win your re-election as the mayor of Cincinnati. But thank you so much for being here at the Katie Phang News Channel. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.